A Raiders tight end does make his way to South Beach. Well, a former Raiders tight end makes his way to South Beach. And what is training camp 2025 going to be all about? That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 2nd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show continues to grow each and every day, even in the offseason, because of your support and because of the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we look good and sound good. We appreciate him. We shout him out as much as we appreciate you and shout you out, Raider Nation. But if you want to check out Ari on Twitter, you can find him at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, 707-654-4693, Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Your calls, your texts. We'll close out the show hearing from you coming up. Segment number 3. Segment number 2, I want to deep dive into the 2025 Raiders training camp that opens up on July 22nd. It's something I've teased a couple times so far this week, but I really want to spend some quality time with it. That's why I pushed it off for an extra day, because again, I think that head coach Pete Carroll, who we're all pretty excited about, we're all excited about the competition. We're excited about what the results could look like in 2025 for this organization. I think he's really setting this team up for success, even based off the schedule that they have lined up for training camp in 2025. What does all that mean? I'll break it down in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. Not a whole lot to get to, but a former Raider tight end finds his way in South Beach. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of this show. That's FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So let's jump into the news of the day when it comes to somewhat the Raiders, and that is not Michael Mayer, the tight end, who the Miami Dolphins had interest in, according to multiple reports. And Vinny Bonsignore from the Las Vegas Review-Journal and, of course, Raider Nation Radio 920 shot that down on, on Monday? He shot that down, saying that the Raiders had no interest in trading Michael Mayer. And a lot of people said, oh, the Dolphins got their eyes on him. Vinny's like, no, it's not going to happen. And we did talk about it on the show on Tuesday morning, saying that, hey, if the Dolphins went with some outrageous offer, maybe the Raiders are going to listen, right? That's your responsibility. You're supposed to do that. Well, Vinny was right. The Raiders had no interest in trading Michael Mayer. So what happened with the Miami Dolphins in their tight end position? They turned their attention to the New York Football Giants and made a trade for former Raider tight end Darren Waller, who you remember recently retired from the National Football League after going to New York and not having a great experience. And he had said on another podcast he wasn't a fan of being lined up to play the fullback position and being asked to block, right, be an inside blocker. And he said, man, after that, I knew I didn't want to play anymore. So he's been in Vegas. The funny thing about it is, and here's the full details, Dolphins traded a conditional 2026 sixth-round pick to the Giants for a 2027 seventh-round pick and Darren Waller. Waller is coming out of retirement after agreeing to a one-year deal with the Dolphins worth up to $5 million. The funny thing about this is every year here in Las Vegas, we have the Battle for Vegas, which is the charity softball game between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Raiders. And the very first year that I arrived in here in 2021, that was really my big first event that I went to, because that's always in July. And I arrived in Vegas in July. I believe it was July 15th was my first day at Raider Nation Radio 920 at Lotus Broadcasting, being in that position and being not only the program director, but obviously on-air personality as well. So my first big event was the Battle for Vegas. They do it every single year. Well, this year it's Team Jack Eichel representing the Vegas Golden Knights versus Team Brock Bowers representing the Raiders. And a guy that was listed on the roster, and he still might be on the roster for the Raiders, was tight end Darren Waller, right? Former Raider tight end Darren Waller. And I was thinking, because we do have media availability, that's one of the good things about this event. We have the chance to go out there. We have the chance to go out and speak to the players on the field before the game, a little media session type thing. And I was going to ask Darren Waller, any chance that you might want to return to football at some stage of the game? Again, the way that he left New York wasn't necessarily because he was tired of football and he didn't want to play. He didn't want to play their style of football. He didn't want to be used the way he was being used in New York. And I still think, even though he's 33 years old, he still has plenty left in the tank. I didn't know if he was going to want to be part of, the National Football League anytime soon, or if he was really content at being retired. Well, I guess I don't have to ask that question because, again, he agrees to a 1-year, $5 million deal with the Miami Dolphins a day after they traded their tight end, Jonnu Smith, who was a big-time difference maker for the Dolphins, big time, receiver. Obviously, he's a tight end, but you have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, and then Jonnu Smith, who did some real damage against the Raiders, right? Just go back and look. Jonnu Smith was an absolute menace against the Raiders. You were wondering how are they going to replace that production after trading him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, there you go. Darren Waller. You line him up in a Coach Mike McDonald-led offense with Tua and the other weapons. I think this is perfect for Darren Waller. Now, how good is he going to be? I don't know, but I'm happy for Darren, right? I always cheer for Darren. He's a guy that has a hell of a story. We've gone over it many different times. I don't cheer for guys to fail, and I hope that he gets everything he wants out of it and then some there in Miami on a 1-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. So congratulations to Darren Waller, former Raider tight end, who obviously made his name with the silver and black when he had his monster season back in 2020. So that was really all. So there is no other conversation when it comes to Michael Mayer and his availability. I do believe that the Raiders are really excited about what he could bring to the table. He's a guy that many different reporters, including myself, saw him be used quite a bit during OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And the fact that Chip Kelly talked highly about him, head coach Pete Carroll talked highly about him, I think they understand what he brings to the table. Is he going to be Brock Bowers? No, but he's going to be a guy that they can definitely use in this offense. And the Raiders need as many weapons offensively as possible. Not only can Big Mike catch the ball and rumble down the field, but he also can block. I think there's a lot of different things you'll see from Michael Mayer, Big Mike, this year for the Raiders. We've been teased and talked about when it comes to 12 personnel. I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel with the Raiders this year. I even think they're going to sprinkle in 13 personnel where they have 3 tight ends. I've talked about it a few times on my radio show. Don't sleep on Ian Thomas. Do not sleep on Ian Thomas. I'm not saying that he's going to get a boatload of attention and catches, but, man, I think the Raiders have a really talented tight end room between Brock Bowers, Big Mike, Ian Thomas, even Justin Shorter is in the mix, but the chances of 4 tight ends being used consistently is very, slim to none. But I do think Ian Thomas is a name that you'll probably hear quite a bit coming up during training camp, which starts on July 22nd. And, of course, we'll talk about training camp coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Today is the second episode, the second showing of the Raiders Squad Show. Debuted on Monday. Myself, Lincoln Kennedy, and Chantel Shand. She's a sideline reporter with the Seattle Storm, TSN Network in Canada, and she's basically the host. She does the Howard Co-selling. Me and Big Link, we go back and forth. Really good conversation. I put a little bit of episode number 1 on Tuesday's show, so hopefully you enjoyed that. She's really good, and I think the show has a chance to be really good. Well, we're going to do episode 2 this morning. So based off what time you're listening to this show right now, around 7:30 a.m. Pacific time is when we're scheduled to do it. It's supposed to be Monday and Thursday, but since this is a different week with the holiday coming up on Friday, we decided to do it Monday and Wednesday. So I just want to give you an update on that. I always want shows to succeed, and I really want shows to succeed that I'm a part of. So just more Raider content for you. The Raider Squad Show this morning. It's a 1-hour live stream, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're supposed to be talking about the AFC West rankings, defensive, deep dive, and then trade rumors as well. So that'll come up in the Raider Squad Show a little bit later on this morning, depending on what time you're listening. And if you missed it, the live show already, don't worry. If you subscribe to this show by way of the podcast or the YouTube page, you've got it right there in your feed, and you can check it out whenever you're ready to do it. But I'm ready to jump into training camp and talk about what I see from this Raiders training camp schedule that really stood out to me, that gets me pretty fired up to see training camp at the start of, at the end of this month coming up, July 22nd. We'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. And as you know, summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? Well, FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You don't want the burn. You want to burn them and make some money, some dollar bill, y'all, right? And if folks have been using FanDuel to track their favorite matchups for a very long time. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It could be a same-game parlay. It can be a bet to ride into the 9th inning. FanDuel's make it so simple, and it feels like you're a part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, well, good. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open up the the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about Raiders Training Camp 2025 and the way that they have this thing structured for the 23 practices that they will have. And everything starts on July 22nd. That's when the vets report, physicals, conditioning tests. That's all that's going to happen July 22nd. That's the day that you can circle on your calendar. And look, the thing about it is I've been blessed to be here in Las Vegas since 2021, been able to be at every Raiders training camp since then, and just being able to see up close and personal. But I've covered the NFL for a very long time. I was in Central Texas, covered the Cowboys, I've covered the Texans, right? I've covered a lot of different teams, but this is something to me that I've seen for the first time as far as a training camp schedule goes. Hell, there's been a time when the Raiders had training camp under Josh McDaniels. We didn't even have a schedule, right? It was like we'd get a text and it'd be, all right, today there's practice at this time, or the next 3 days is what practice looks like. And that would be it. It would be very close to the vest. Well, you know, this is a lot different when it comes to head coach Pete Carroll. It's just another sign that he absolutely 100% has a blueprint. He's going to stick to it, and he knows the recipe of success. He's got the skins on the wall. He's got the resume to prove it. And when I just saw this schedule, all I did is get a smile on my face and said, yeah, I cannot wait to see how this all plays out. So again, July 22nd, that's when the vets report, physical conditioning tests, all that stuff goes on. Then they've got a 5 days acclimation period, and then that's an 8:30 a.m. practice, followed by a walkthrough at 5:15 p.m. So it's almost like 2 a days, even though, you know, the walkthrough isn't, you know, a full-fledged practice. But that's how it looks right there. 8:30 a.m. will be the practices, and then when they have their walkthroughs, it'll be later that evening at 5:15 p.m. So remember, training camp started on the 22nd. Then you got an acclimation period, 5 days. You don't want to just go full throttle, throw the pads on right then and there, and then get after it. Well, on August 2nd, they have their mock game going on at Allegiant Stadium. And I know a lot of folks have already been getting the notification, already been getting their tickets for that mock game at Allegiant Stadium. They had that last year. That's a Saturday. They're going to have that again this year. It's going to be August 2nd, their mock game at Allegiant Stadium. But this is where it gets good, because right now you're thinking, all right, this sounds like training camp, Q. What's the big deal? The themes of the day start on August 4th. I have the whole calendar right here in front of me, and I just look at it, and just like I said, I get a smile. So check this out. They have competition Wednesday, turnover Thursday, no repeat Friday, tell the truth Monday, review Saturday, bonus day. And look, this is the thing about it. These are not always on that day. So competition Wednesday might fall on a Friday based off of the last day that they were off for practice, right? So if they don't have a practice day, it's almost like having a weekend or having a Sunday, and then all of a sudden Monday starts, and the Monday might actually start on Wednesday. So it doesn't necessarily always fall on the Wednesday, the Thursday, the Friday, tell the truth Monday, right? But competition Wednesday. And again, remember the theme of Pete Carroll. Remember the big always compete that's right there on the door when you get to the Raiders practice facility. It's right there as soon as every single player walks in from the parking lot. Right there, always compete. Right? They're always competing. There's basketball hoops all around the facility. They get into shootouts. They have a really good time, but everything is about competition. So you think that practice isn't going to be ramped up to the 1,000th degree when it's competition Wednesday? Right? Like the first competition Wednesday comes up on Monday, the 4th. Matter of fact, when I said that the themes start, so August 4th, that's actually the first competition Wednesday. Practice will actually be at 10 a.m. That's practice number 10. Practice will be at 10 a.m. The walkthrough will be at 5:45 that night. But everything's about competition. So you're telling me that these guys, all 90 of these professionals, ain't going to be out there and putting it all on the line, right? And trying to be as competitive as possible? Right? You think that there's some incentive at the end? I guarantee there is. Turnover Thursday, something we talked about quite a bit here on the show. How can they create more turnovers? Well, guess what? Practice them. Practice your turnovers, right? Practice creating turnovers. That's how you get them, right? Regardless of how you feel about previous staffs and previous teams and what they've been able to do, they haven't created enough turnovers. They haven't. And so to be able to have an emphasis on that, what do you have to do? Focus in on it. You play like you practice, right? So they're literally having turnover Thursday, right? That's something to get excited about, right? If you think that the Raiders aren't going to have and create more turnovers than they did a year ago, I'd be willing to bet you some money. I bet you FanDuel's got that prop bet right there. You can go check it out because of days like turnover Thursday. Again, setting the tone. And it might be something that you think is no big deal, but in your mind as a player or even as a competitor, right? You think about, today's turnover Thursday. Okay. Well, one, I don't want to turn the ball over. And if you're on defense, you're like, yep, I want to do nothing but create turnovers. Today's my day. Turnover Thursday. No repeat Friday, right? So basically, don't make the same mistake. Don't make the same mistake. That's something that Pete Carroll mentioned at OTAs and mandatory minicamp when he was talking about a couple of the rookies. They make mistakes, but they don't make the same mistake. No repeat Friday. I'm pretty sticky sure that that's what that's going to be all about. No repeat Friday, right? Tell the truth Monday. I'm sure you're reviewing some film and you're breaking it down and being 100% blunt and honest with everyone, right? Where they're at, where they feel like they need to be, what they're doing good, what they need to do better. Review Saturday. Right? Again, just going out there. Let me check when to see the first review Saturday is. Review Saturday, the first one is on, it's after a bonus day. Review Saturday comes up on Friday, August 15th. Right? That's between their joint practice with the 49ers and their second preseason game with the 49ers. So they have a review Saturday. And then I mentioned bonus days, right? So again, they're not always going to be on the day of whatever day, like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on the calendar, but they're all themed. All 23 days for the most part, starting on the 4th, have a theme, right? I mentioned the joint practice with the 49ers. That's August 14th, right, at their facility, ahead of practice, preseason game number 2, right? So their 17th day of practice is going to be a joint practice with the 49ers. That's something that the Raiders didn't do last year under Antonio Pierce. I think a lot of us said that it would have been good if they did. I think it makes a lot of sense when they have those joint practices. I know from everything I've heard, Pete Carroll wasn't a huge fan of that when he was in Seattle. And even the guys in Seattle asked him, hey, we got you first preseason game. Are we going to have a joint practice? No, we got some other plans. But he has a joint practice against the 49ers. And that's going to be ahead of preseason game number 2, the one preseason game at Allegiant Stadium that comes up on Saturday the 16th. Right? So excited about that. But those joint practices, and I like watching other teams practice in these joint practices. I really enjoyed when the 49ers were here last time, not only because I get to catch up with some guys that I know from the Bay Area, like my guy Greg Papa and others, but the fact that I like seeing how they practice, especially defensively, and how they set themselves up. Talking about Turnover Thursday, what the 49ers do that I think is really good and smart is they practice going and getting the ball before practice really starts, right? Kind of in their one-on-ones, individual drills. They go through a bunch of drills where it's tip drills and the guys trying to go and get the ball, linebackers popping the ball up in the air, DBs trying to secure the turnover. Like, I think that's really smart. I think that's what they should do. I'm so excited to see what kind of drills Pete Carroll and company are running. Because again, if you go back to see what they did in Seattle, the year that the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, they had 28 interceptions. They forced 28 interceptions. And that's not the only way you get turnovers, but that's a whole hell of a lot when you think what the Raiders did last year with 10. Right? So, I mean, that's just night and day. That's why, again, I go back to them creating turnovers, and we've talked about it till we're blue in the face that they've got to find a way to do it. They're going to do it this year just based off, like I said, their way that they practice. Their bonus days, right? I can only imagine what that is. But just, again, I love the fact that everything is themed, especially when you are dealing with professional athletes. You think these don't mean a little bit more than just another practice day? Oh, yeah, hey, going out for practice number 16. Or no, so you're going out for practice. Let's see, you're going out for practice number 11, right? That's Tuesday the 12th. Are you going out there for that, or are you going out there for Turnover Thursday, right? What means more, right? If someone, hey, man, how's practice going? Oh, you know, we're just into our double digits. We're into practice day number 11. Oh, what's today? Oh, man, today's Turnover Thursday. You think that doesn't get everyone a little bit more hyped? Just having a theme on it gets these guys in the right state of mind. I know if there was a theme every day of the week for my shows, it would ramp me up even a little bit more, and I'm already ramped up, right? There's some that are like, well, Q, you don't need to be ramped up anymore. You're already, and that's true. But I would go and take it to a whole nother level if there was another theme behind it, right? And sometimes there is. Sometimes we have shows where there are themes, and it's just something about that, man. You put a title on something, you put a name on something, it gets you excited. It's just like in music. Remember we used to have like Throwback Thursdays or Flashback Fridays or, you know, whatever, stuff like that. It just makes it more fun. West Coast Wednesdays, right? When I was a music DJ, you know, it just makes it that much more exciting, right? We used to have bootleg Mondays when I did shows. It was so much fun. But themes make everything fun. Why do you think schools, you know, your kids in high school or college, they have themes, you know, during homecoming week? Oh, today is whatever. And kids get more fired up. Folks get more fired up when there's a theme behind it. So I just love this. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to head coach Pete Carroll and that no one across the league does it. I'm sure that a lot of teams do it, but it's just the way it's rolled out and the way that it's right there, as a matter of fact. So if I'm looking at the schedule and I'm getting excited, what do you think Brock Bowers is doing when he's looking at the schedule, or Max Crosby's doing while he's thinking at the schedule, or Geno Smith, right? Jacoby Myers. How do you think these guys are feeling when they're looking at, oh, man, we got this. Okay, we got this day. Oh, we got bonus day. Okay. Tell the truth Monday. All right, right? I mean, like those kind of things, that to me, I think is really piques the interest of these players more than just going out in 100+ degree weather in the desert and go out and practice, right? And then be dedicated all day because you got to walk through later on, right? 5:15, 5:45, whatever the case may be. So that to me is super exciting. So preseason game number 1 is on August 7th against Seattle, 7 p.m. That's in Seattle. Preseason game number 2 is the 16th versus the 49ers. That's at Allegiant Stadium. That's a Saturday. It's 1 p.m. And then they close things out on the 23rd against the Cardinals. That's preseason game number 3 at Arizona, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Speaking of, the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to host the pregame and the postgame show for the Raiders for the preseason games. JT the Brick has taken over from doing the pre and the postgame show like he does in the regular season, and he's actually gone to the broadcast booth. So he's been up there doing the radio call side of things. That's going to stay the same this year as well. So I got another opportunity for the 3rd season in a row. I'm pretty excited about that. I know it's just a me type thing, but it's fun. It's a new experience, right? It's something that I've been getting, I think, pretty good at. I enjoy it. So I get to host the pregame and the postgame shows in the preseason for all 3 of those games. So starting on the 7th, the 16th, the 7th, the 16th, and the 23rd, your boy will be doing the broadcast, at least the pregame and postgame for the Raiders radio network, which I think is awesome as well. But I'm telling you, I know that it's less than 3 weeks away from the start of training camp. I cannot wait. Like I told Lincoln Kennedy and Chantel Shan on the first episode of the Raiders squad show that we're doing, and of course the second one is today, that I'm excited like that dog that's been in the car on a long road trip and just can't wait to get out of the car and run, open the door and let me run. That's how I feel when I check out this training camp and knowing that we're about 3 weeks away. It'll be here sooner than you know it, man. As soon as this holiday wraps up, coming up on Friday, the 4th of July, and Al Davis's birthday, it's going to be here like boom, just like that. Trust and believe. I'm here for it. So I always want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about training camp and the way that Pete Carroll has set it up? Let me know your thoughts. 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will close out the show. We'll do that next. It's right here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Smooth Raider. He's calling to talk about Geno Smith, that video that's been floating around social media at the 7-on-7 tournament in Florida when he's talking about, that's why I get paid the big bucks, something that I briefly talked about on Tuesday's show. Here's Smooth Raider breaking it down for us.
What's going on, Q? This is Smooth Raider. I want to address the viral video that's gone out of Geno Smith, addressing a crowd at a charity event. I just want to say, I want him to understand that he's in a position where, people are going to antagonize him. He's been in the league for a while, so he should know these things, and I talked about, emotional intelligence and being professional. And he has been professional. He talks to the media. He's very eloquent. He speaks very eloquently when he talks to the media. And I've seen him, on his P's and Q's, and I just want to touch bases on like the things that was said, I've been behind, that derogatory racial slur that he said, and with malice and with hate behind it. I moved from, like I told you before, Q, I was in the military. I moved from California to Louisiana and in the 90s, and, it was still a lot of segregation when I moved there, and I was called everything in the book. I couldn't even use a bathroom in certain places in Louisiana because of my skin tone. So it kind of hit home, and hopefully, Pete Carroll can address this issue with him in-house, and it goes no further than that. I just read something this morning about Tom Brady addressing it, and it's not a good look, you know. So I just want Geno Smith to understand where he's at, you know, who he represents. You know, he represents the team as a whole, and, you know, I understand, you know, you're from Dade County and y'all talk like that, but you don't have to talk like everybody. If everybody was talking like that, just like my father told me, if everybody was jumping off a bridge, would you jump off the bridge, brother? No, you would not. So you don't have to talk like that. Understand what I'm saying? So, and I'm from the hood, so I get it, you know. But with that being said, one love, Q to you. Shout out to you, my brother. Keep doing what you're doing. And shout out to the Raider Nation. And I'm going to leave you with this. There's only one nation, and that's Raider Nation. Smooth Raider out.
Thank you, my man, for the call. I have to admit, I only saw a 30-second video, if that, right? I didn't hear derogatory statements or any racial slurs that were thrown. Not saying that didn't happen. I just didn't hear it. So if there is a extended video, that's why I haven't really talked about it, because I don't have the context. I don't know what led to him, you know, saying what he said. It was a 7-on-7 tournament, so it wasn't a charity event. It was, you know, a kids event, basically, for football. You know, and so he was the coach. He has a team. There's plenty of players that have teams like that. I know that was in his area, Dade County there, as he mentioned. That's how they talk there. I won't be an expert on talking about this subject because I don't know what led to, you know, the video that I saw that was 30 seconds or whatever the case may be. If there's more out there, direct me to it. I would be, you know, more than happy to check it out and look at it. But I really don't know more about it than just what we saw on video. And I don't like to assume what happened and what led him to say whatever he said, what happened before that and what happened after that. So it's kind of hard for me to comment and chime in on when I haven't got to see, or, you know, I wasn't there to witness what actually happened. So thanks so much for the call, though. I do appreciate you and totally understand some of the scenarios that, you know, that you laid out there. And the one thing I can say about the subject real quick is that, yeah, there's no doubt that you got to be careful. Right. In his position, in any position where, you know, you're in the public eye, you definitely got to be careful with what you're saying, what you're doing, because there's always a camera rolling somewhere. That's the one thing I can co-sign 100%. It doesn't have to be exclusive to that situation. That's exclusive to any situation. Got to be careful no matter what you got going on, because, you know, there's a lot for a guy like Geno Smith to lose if he puts himself in the wrong situation. So we've seen things go really bad at those 7-on-7 or even high school football games, and you don't want to be, you don't want to end up on the wrong side of something bad that could potentially happen. Again, Smooth Raider, thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Nate Dogg in Seattle. He said, Nate from Seattle here. Regarding Ruggs, we all believe in forgiveness, but talk is cheap. Request a 1-year incentive-heavy deal. Take $100,000 for yourself and give the rest to her family. Ball out and play for her. He did his time, but he should set an example. Show the league and its fans what it means for an NFL player who did wrong to be truly accountable. That's Nate in Seattle talking about Henry Ruggs when we got a call on Tuesday's show about could you see Henry Ruggs get another opportunity in the league? And I don't have any idea, right? There's some teams that may look at him and say, yeah, sure, he did his time. You know, he's good to go now. I do think it's, like Nate in Seattle said, I think it's about sitting down with the family. I think it's about talking with them, getting their blessing, you know, hopefully getting their forgiveness. Like I said, I'm a firm believer in forgiveness as well. But again, like you said, you know, talk is cheap. Back it up. Do something, right? Be an example. Be, you know, somebody who can share your story, give your testimony, and maybe help prevent a situation like that ever again, right? Someone that hopefully looks up to him says, hey, man, I don't want to end up like that, right? Having that conversation with Henry or seeing what happened to him is going to make me not do something silly like that, right? I mean, there's ways to make this, you know, tragic story, you know, beneficial for others, and that's just trying to be an example and prevent it from happening to others. There's no bringing Tina Tintor or her dog back, which is super unfortunate. It's awful. It's a tragedy. But if he can find a way to make an example and set a good path for others moving forward, that could be, you know, a small silver lining. But again, I think it starts with the family, like you said. And obviously, you know, forgiveness is a big deal as well. So thanks so much, Nate Dogg, for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Bessemer Raider. He's calling to talk about an event that took place at Mile High Stadium in Denver over the weekend that he wanted to talk about. Here's Bessemer Raider.
Hey, Q. This is the Bessemer Raider calling in to let you know something that happened this weekend. I attended the Metallica M72 concerts at Mile High Stadium. On Sunday night, the final show, once it was over, the band is doing their thank yous to the crowd and all that fun stuff that goes along with the end of the performance. When the lead singer of the band, James Hetfield, asked the crowd how they felt cheering for a lifetime Raiders fan in the Denver Donkeys Stadium. He started getting some boos, and he said that he's been a lifetime Raider fan. And then he looks back, his back was to the south stands. He points at the Bronco up there, and he goes, "Oh, look how cute, a little donkey." And then he's like, he kept on, egging everybody on. And he finally thanked everybody. He says, "Hey, man, thanks for letting Metallica come and play in your cute little donkey stadium. And Metallica loves Denver." I thought it was just great that he came into Mile High Stadium and represented it the way he did. So maybe in the future you can get him on one of your shows and do an interview with him. But I just thought that you and everybody else out there in Raider Nation would get a little kick out of that story. So hopefully you get this on the air and we can one day maybe hear from him on one of your shows. Until then, thanks a lot. Keep up all the good work. You're awesome, man. Go Raiders!
Bessemer, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And it's funny that you bring that story up. On Tuesday on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, my guy Hardcore Raider, who listens to this show as well, he actually called in and told me the exact same story. How cool is that? He was obviously at the show as well with you. So there you go. There was another member of Raider Nation in the building, but he literally told me that same story. I think that's real cool. James Hetfield, the lead singer of Metallica, it's well documented how he's a Raider fan. I would love to get him on my show and have a chance to talk with him. I know my guy Vegas Jess has even suggested him before. I'll work whatever channels I can, especially now is probably a good time to be able to get him. Would love to. But yeah, I love that representation. And I also love the fact that you and Hardcore Raider both chimed in. He called in my radio show. You called into the podcast to tell me the same story. That is awesome. Way to represent. So thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. This text comes from Raiders Morpheus. Q, this is Raider Morpheus. I have two questions. Besides Max, who are the guys on defense that you see that could take away an opposing team's top receivers? Because I'm seeing holes in the defense. Last question. Everybody's talking about Thornton, but what about Besh? Can he be a dependable guy for Geno? Is Besh similar to Cooper Kupp type guy, or should we lower our expectations about Besh? Thanks for all that you do, Q. Just win, baby. That's Raider Morpheus. Really good text, my man. And this is the thing. If you're just talking about taking out other receivers, you're just talking about corners or a safety. Right? I mean, because Max is a guy that's going to get to the quarterback. If you're just talking about taking out the receivers, like you mentioned, that could take away an opposing team's top receivers, I think Jacorian Bennett can do that. He was doing it last year until he got injured, so he has to prove that he can stay healthy. Then there's questions, right? I mean, you don't know. Can Eric Stokes be that guy? Can Darian Porter Jr., can he be that guy, right? I mean, can Jacorian Bennett stay healthy? Can he be that guy? I mean, can DeCam Richardson have a bounce back year two in the league as opposed to what he did last year? Like, there's definitely a lot of questions on who could take out a team's opposing top receivers. I think right now, if I had to put my thumb on the name, or my finger on the name, I'd say it's Jacorian Bennett. He would be the guy that I think has the best opportunity. As far as top guys on the defense that make life difficult on opposing teams, I think what you said, Max Crosby, that's a no-brainer. But I do think a guy like Malcolm Kuntz, if he comes back healthy, which he looks like he is, he'll be a problem on the across from Max. So I think he's a guy that you're going to have to pay attention to. Adam Butler in the middle. If Christian Wilkins obviously comes back, that's a big deal, but that's a big if. We don't know if and when he'll return. So I'm looking at Adam Butler to be a difference maker as well. And I think that, a young guy is going to have to step up, like Isaiah Palomao, right? A guy that got a nice contract extension as a safety. The Raiders gave him that 3-year contract extension this offseason, right? He earned that. But I think he's going to have to, step up and make some plays as well. But there's a lot of questions. There are some potential holes on this Raiders defense, and it's going to be led by a lot of young dudes. So there's going to have to be some guys that are definitely going to have to step up. I mentioned Darian Porter. I definitely think he's going to be a guy that's going to be required to step up as well. As far as the wide receivers go, Dante Thornton, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, 4th-round pick, I like him because of his size and his speed. He's like Trey Tucker, but much taller. So I think he has an opportunity, but he's also coming from that Tennessee offense. He's got to learn the NFL game, right? It's not always easy to translate, that Josh Heupel-led offense. It's similar to the Art Briles-led offense that Baylor had at one point. It's hard to translate to the NFL, but I did see them giving them the opportunity to get the ball early and often in mandatory minicamp. So I think that they're going to hope that Dante Thornton can translate and transition to the NFL really well. I think Jack Besh could be a really good player. He's tough. He's a really tough dude. I start looking at guys like Hines Ward, guys that don't mind going over the middle, and they'll actually go out there and they'll lay the wood. They'll look for the contact. He'll block too, but he's a guy, I wouldn't call him Cooper Kupp. Like I think he's a tougher dude, right? Somewhat, I don't want to say Anquan Bolden, because Anquan Bolden was really stinking good. Not that Hines Ward wasn't, but Anquan Bolden he seemed like he was a different type of tough. Right? He looked like one of those dudes that, man, you punch a brick wall and that brick wall is going to punch you back. That's Anquan Bolden. Right? He just was another dude. But I think that's more just kind of the tough, over the middle, right? Not afraid of contact. Also a guy that will lean into blocking. He'll do the dirty work. I think, and that's what I believe the Raiders were looking for. I think he's a tougher Tyler Lockett, right? If we're thinking about Pete Carroll and what Pete Carroll's done, remember how Tyler Lockett was really dependable there in Seattle, really good possession receiver. Now, I know he was a big special teams guy as well, big return guy coming out of K-State, but that's not Besh's game. But Besh is a tough dude, man, tough as nails. So their biggest deal is they got to get him under contract. But he can definitely play a role this year for the Silver and Black. Thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. We'll close things out with a call from Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina, calling in to chime in on the philosophical conversation that's been going on the last couple of days here on the show that started off from Oakland Senior. So here he is, Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Thank you. Hey, Ari. Hey, Raider Nation. This is Jacob Mazza from Wilmington, North Carolina. Just calling in to get into the whole philosophical concept that Raider Nation has been getting down with. It's like you and Mr. Key, and that was real cool that you played Mr. Key's music, man. Q, that was what's up. That was hella cool. But I've been thinking about what everybody is saying and about competing. I've been following Pete Carroll ever since he was at USC, man. I just like the guy. He's got good moxie, good energy. Just like the way he coaches up the team, everybody's an individual. And they're always striving to get better. And it's like a commitment to excellence. And when Tom Brady came into the Raiders, he broke out a coin that a sister gave him. And on that coin it says a commitment to excellence. And I'm an artist, right? I haven't retired or anything like that. I paint, and I'm also a professor at Cape Fear Community College. I'm just building my philosophy syllabus. Holy goodness, that's been crazy. And I'm also teaching world literature, and so I got to teach a poem, and I teach the autumn wind, and I break down my own critical analysis of everything, and it's just a part of who I am. And Raider Nation, and I like what Al Davis had to say. I like the way he went about being an owner and a man. And I can say the same thing about Pete Carroll. I respect the guy. I'm you know what? Always competing mindset means that you're getting after it every single day. Every day you're practicing your craft. You're getting better. I'm competing against Van Gogh and Picasso, and I'm competing against other contemporary artists. I want to get a job with the Las Vegas Raiders. I want them to be yo, I want you to paint Jim Otto. And I'm being bet, what's up? Let me do that job. But, I don't come cheap because, I'm trying to be the best there ever is. And, I think Pete Carroll is talking that mindset, seeing the best there ever is, there ever was. And you know what? You know what that means? That means just win, baby. Sorry for the soliloquy, but I had to do it.
Jacob, thanks for the call as always, man. Appreciate you. And the mindset from Pete Carroll is definitely where it needs to be, right? That's why I wanted to, break it down and talk about training camp in segment number 2, just to let you know where the mindset was when it came to Pete Carroll and what he was thinking and the way that he even had training camp all played out, right? And so that, I think that you're spot on about that. The competition, even those themes that I was talking about in training camp, I think that's going to be a big difference and a big change in mentality for this Raiders organization and this team, those guys in the locker room. As far as you and your goals, man, I'm hoping you get all of them, right? You know me, you're guaranteed to miss a shot that you don't take. So I love the fact that you're still grinding. You're still doing what you do. You've got goals that you're trying to reach. Keep on grinding, brother. Keep on grinding. Keep on grinding. That's what it's all about. Thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. And that's going to do it for today's show. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have more news and notes of the day. We'll obviously hear from you, more calls and texts at 707-654-4693. We'll have some more conversation as well. We'll also get prepared and get ready for Friday's 4th of July and also Al Davis's birthday. We'll do that all coming up on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.